excerpt about on your book, so I gotta have to come and see you.
Oh, great. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
I've seen them all online. Yeah. Wow. Did you know that? Listen to it.
It's a strange little.
Right.
Yeah.
This was the person I was talking about. I was looking at for Peyton's wedding at the concert.
Oh, perfect.
He plays with the group.
Okay.
It's a small.
A small world. Well, great.
And we're the best of friends.
Yes, yes. A baby.
So you were multi-talented.
I guess so.
We have good taste. We should know we're talking about the same person.
I left the classroom to do something creative. I was writing film and trying to get that produced, and was keeping the lights on with music, and music just kind of started to take off.
Cool. Congratulations for following that.
Well, the film isn't actually done yet, so don't congratulate me.
No. It's coming. It's coming. So.
And it was Mitchell.
Yeah.
David Mitchell. Look out for it. Listen for that name.
David Mitchell?
You saw him here first.
He wrote the book.
He wrote the book.
I know. There's no relation to the Mitchells at Westminster, right?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, they're very, you know.
I think I did hear about that.
You might have been.
Oh, okay.
Alexis.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
You're so welcome. You want to put that down?
Yeah. 14th and U, that's DC.
Oh, it is.
14th U Street, Black Broadway.
I'm there for this.
I spent a lot of time on 14th U. Wow, look at that. Yeah, 14th U Street. What kind of comes up with 14th U Street? Kind of the bell, which I kind of like. This is like they call it Black Broadway back in the day. So you had Harlem in New York. You had mini Harlem down in 14th U. All the arts and musicians would come, the artists would come. So yeah, and now it's kind of gentrified, so it's not that.
And I guess this is so different from me. Kind of went a different direction with this work.
I've been using it quite a while. I think it's still good.
It's good enough, right?
If it ain't good now at 82 years old, you know. All right, my
Thank you,
brother.
Jim, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for buying the book. Man.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Right. Okay.
Did you want a tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and my daughter-in-law knows you, Shanika Wilder. Goldman Sachs working with Obama Jones.
Okay, yeah, you know, it's a small.
What? It's bigger.
Build Obama Jones.
You call it that, stronger.
Appreciate it. Hello. How are you?
Francine Edwards
David
from
Mitchell?
Rocky Mountain.
Rocky Mountain, North Carolina.
just
All right.
like Ricky.
I know where that one is. How are you?
Was you at your New York?
Great.
Yes, get it correct. Yeah, we all grew up with your mom.
Okay.
And uncle.
Both of them are crazy. I assume you're crazy. I assume you're crazy too. Then I know this one.
Yeah.
The good kind though. Francine.
Yes, I saw your mom and Ricky 2 weeks ago.
You already had your copy.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we ordered our copies, huh?
It's Francine with an N?
N-E.
I-N-E?
Yes.
Got it. take your little finger time. Got it. Page 64. Okay? Help me to sign it.
Okay, all right, don't lose my place. I know my head was in the way. I'll take one of your bookmarks too. And this is my husband, Bert.
How are you? Hey, Dave. How you doing? Good to see you. Pleasure.
So that's our house book. When I finish reading it, then he will read it. But I gave copies to my son and daughter.
Thank you so much. You got about what, half the book left?
A little over half the book.
How's it going so far?
So far, so good. Yeah.
What do you mean by Al?
I wasn't
Al a
sure.
mess? Is he a mess? Are things gonna get cleaned up?
Well, you know, I wasn't sure what to expect. I just knew that you were Stephanie's son,
Okay.
and I was going to patronize you in any way
Whatever I
I could.
wrote.
That's right. You're in the family. So, I haven't got to the part where somebody's messed up now. So, you're giving me a little bit of a hint of what's to come.
Oh, man.
I'm so proud of you. And I haven't read it yet, but I will be reading it while I'm in the hospital. Because I won't have anything to do but do stuff like this.
That's right. And you'll be able to tell me about it.
I sure will.
Thank you.
Are you going to do a talk
Good to
too?
see you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do a quick talk. Saturday people want to, hang out. Real quick something.
Well, we came all the way from North Alabama.
You think it worked it well?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Good to see you. Over here. How you doing? I'm good. Good to see you.
I have to go back out to the park and that's the big thing to know.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. You want to do it now or
well, I mean, are people doing that now?
what? Get your card?
Purchase, let me go get some cards.
Yes.
Okay. I'll get some cards first. So that I can, then.
How you doing? David Mitchell. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate it. Hi, David Mitchell.
You went to school with Joseph Small?
Yes.
That's my cousin.
Oh, cool.
So he told us
So did that?
about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Joe's one of my best friends. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, he just sent me a quick email. I was like, we should go to that.
Yeah. Some wine in there and good companies.
Thank you so much.
I'm Jonna's friend.
Okay.
Chester.
What's your name?
Adrian.
Okay.
Is my son.
Okay. Yeah, at some point, I think. Yeah.
So, congratulations.
Thank you. Did you want to get a book?
I do want to get
Okay. I don't assume, I don't want to be pushing.
Just write your name so it's spelled correctly. Is Jonna here? I thought
She
I
is.
saw her.
Yeah, she's in there. ADRIEN.
Yes. And how much are they?
$19.99 plus tax. This card?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So are you going to speak? You going to talk to us about
Sure am. Good, run it. Cool. Thank you so much for supporting. I really appreciate it.
You can write your name down. I've got to write some in here somewhere where I guess
You might know.
Make up like 10 books.
Hey, how are you?
Doing great. How you doing? Hi. How's my boy
I miss
doing?
you guys. He's good.
Is he good?
Mr. Jack.
Oh yeah, I know this one.
That's right.
Mama's girl.
Hello. Did you want to use a card? I can slide it for you. You want to send this to her?
She's got her chef, so
How long did you work on it?
6 years.
Really?
To my day job and this, yeah. Absolutely.
Your mom and I were laughing the other night about dragged to that movie. We were sleeping.
What, Brutus and Madison
Oh
Square?
my God, we'll never forget that. Oh, the scene?
Yeah, there were some adult scenes in that movie.
I know. We didn't care. We wanted to go.
I kind of fell asleep anyway.
You did.
Thank you, Miss Jack.
You're welcome.
Do you want this sent as a text or email? Okay, you'll have to
Oh, I
put it
have to do it?
Yeah, they
Wait,
make you work
you
for it a
write
little
to my phone
bit.
number?
Yeah.
Oh, do text.
That's easier? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And don't feel like you have to let us out here. We came to hear you.
Okay.
So don't feel inhibited.
Yeah, I won't,
You know, we can be doing a lot of things. We'd rather be here.
It didn't read it out of your chip, so
Oh, it didn't?
no, so you can just
Thank you for coming.
yeah. Welcome back to the space. We talk some. Did she leave?
No, she's in there.
She right there. I know she is. That's the one else to
What's out there for
I'm visiting from Baltimore, so just learning about this event. So I'm just learning about the book. So
I'm in DC. So.
oh, you are? Okay.
Where are you living in Baltimore?
Bolton Hill.
I don't know the information, so I'm staying over in Inner Harbor area.
It's walking distance from the Inner Harbor, but kind of more like the Brooklyn of everything. So it's more hipster part. I work in the Inner Harbor. I'm a lawyer. Intellectual property, copyright trademark, and then other business litigation.
Thank you. Glad to support.
Thank you. So, yeah, it's
No
important.
problem.
first of many. We're celebrating two things. We're celebrating, number one, that you're here. We're celebrating the art that's in the room. And we're just celebrating life. Number one, we have an amazing author in our presence, David Mitchell, that just wrote this book, We Hold These Truths. So make sure that you get this book before you leave. It's an amazing book. I'm going to let him kind of talk about it. It's going to be more like a chill and chat, if you will. We're going to let him expound about the book, kind of tell us his influence behind it, how he kind of decided to write this book. I've known David for years. I know his family. I'm really proud to have him here and to be a part of our first cultural engagement. An incredible young man, Harvard, Yale graduate, an attorney, was working with a big firm in New York, and kind of took a break to come back and write this book. So I'm very curious to hear about what inspired him to take this leap of faith and just kind of put into words, I'm sure, his experiences post-Obama, about what's going on in the political climate, how it's affecting us. So it's things that are happening right now in society, which is really great. It's hot, it's good energy, and it's a great book. But I'm going to let him tell you in his own words about why he chose to write this particular book. So again, it's a chill and chat moment. Hopefully, you'll allow us to ask questions if you don't mind. And again, thank you, Dave, for being here, and thank you all for coming. So I'll let you start and just give us some background and just lead us in.
Thank you all for coming here tonight. I know it's it's Saturday. Folks have brunch and other things that they could be doing, maybe already have done. So thank you all for coming out and taking time to be part of this celebration. Secondly, I want to thank September Gray and for being such a fine patron of the arts and for spending the last month, really more than the last month, maybe 2 or 3 months, kind of thinking about and planning this event. I'm so excited to be here. I think we got something for you out here. Somebody needs to
come on in. Oh.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you. So I like to think it kind of have to be a conversation. So if people have questions at any moment, feel free to hop in. I'm going to try to not get too political here. I don't know everyone's political, but this is decidedly a political novel. It is inspired by real politics and my experience in those real politics. Let me first say that Al Carpenter's protagonist is not David Mitchell. Repeat that again. Al Carpenter is not David Mitchell. So I disavow anything that you read in this book about. Let me give a little personal background first, and then we can kind of dive into kind of the background of the book. I was born in Washington, D.C. Back in 19-something, and was raised by a single mother in D.C. back in the 80s. She taught me the importance of hard work and fearlessness, and I know I could not have done this without her influence. Went to public schools growing up until high school. My mother decided I needed a different experience, so I got a really rich experience in public schools. And back when they were really good, actually. And then went to a private all-boys high school called Gonzaga College High School, Catholic Jesuits, kind of Georgetown. And then went to Yale University, where I studied history, focused on U.S. history, kind of revolutionary period through to the Civil War. Didn't have a minor at Yale, but I took enough courses. I called myself a Latin and classics minor. I don't know why I liked that stuff, but I did it. I really enjoyed reading Latin, whatever. Graduated in 2004, and then went to DC where I was a paralegal for a couple of years at Skadden Arps, Slate Moore Film. And then went to law school at Harvard, graduated in 2009. And then, I'll get a little bit into this because it kind of ties into the story, but I had an opportunity to help run a U.S. Senate race in North Carolina, that first set of elections after the 2008 election. An election set that people really largely slept through, which is kind of the inspiration behind this book. So let me go back to kind of squarely addressing the background to this book. I was a third-year law student in the fall of 2008. So you may remember what was going on. This guy, Barack Obama, had just been elected. And my friends, pretty much to a man and woman, were all convinced that this moment would transform race and politics in our country. That this was it. And I was skeptical. I was intensely skeptical. I felt a little nervous and weird about that. My friends were all celebrating, and so am I, but kind of in the back of my mind, like, wait a minute, let's be careful. Let's kind of slow this down a little bit. What does this mean? I had been a history major, so I knew that history was replete with examples of moments where we thought we'd reached this pinnacle and found that we hadn't actually gotten So fast forward to January of '09, and you just see the inauguration. One of my uncle's very good friends, Marquette Chester over there, one of his very good friends, Ken Lewis, was thinking about running for U.S. Senate. He said, hey, David, I'm thinking about running for U.S. Senate. Why don't you come down here and work for me? So I had two responses, but I would say one inward response, one outward response. The outward response was, oh, this is great, I'm so excited. The inward response was, Negro, please. Right? You cannot win a U.S. Senate race in North Carolina. You are a black man. I didn't say this, but thinking it. There's never been an African American senator, governor, anything in North Carolina. So when he asked me, despite that, I kind of thought about it, and I decided, you know what the heck? Because there was this kind of Obama thesis that was floating around at the time. And this Obama thesis was that this moment changes everything. Let's see, let's test it. Let's see if we actually have gotten to this post-racial moment. So I went down to North Carolina, where I spent my summers growing up until high school. So deep ties there. And what we found was that the pushback to progress wasn't just coming from conservatives, not the usual aspects. It was coming from progressives. It was coming from African Americans, the same people that just 9 months before had been so vociferous and loud on the front lines of this Obama thing. And they were articulating a very interesting, analysis. Right? Their thesis was a black man can't win. Right? This is being told to us in the campaign trail, not in public, obviously, but behind the scenes, like people in the Democratic Party, advisors. A black man can't win. We want to be with Ken Lewis, but we can't be with him. We just can't do it. And so that kind of frustration led me to write this book. Right? And so I wrote the book for 2 reasons. The first is I want people to get upset about the missed opportunity we had back in 2010 to transform the Barack Obama coalition into a sustainable, progressive Democratic Party coalition. We could have actually built something much larger than Barack Obama going forward. We kind of squandered that opportunity. The second thing I want to, the second reason why I wrote this book was I want people to know that there's hope still. We can still deliver on 2008's hope and kind of harvest change from that hope if we re-engage, right? If we re-engage and stay engaged. And last year I wrote a piece called "America Needs Donald Trump," and people who didn't read the article thought it was crazy. Have you lost your mind? If you read the article, you found that I made I think a pretty basic argument, and that is that nothing big, if you look back, nothing big in our country's history has ever happened until our backs have been completely against the wall. And so I look at this moment with Donald Trump, and I look at kind of the engagement, this kind of renewed excitement and vigor around politics. I'm excited about that. Think about the Women's March we had, think about the climate change thing we had in DC a couple weeks ago. People are kind of back in the mix. And so that's what we didn't have in 2010. Let me say this. If you think back to kind of 1965, the Voting Rights Act, and I'm going to attack the Democratic Party here for a second, so bear with me. Because I don't think it's a Republican problem. It's a systemic problem, but Democrats still don't get it. So since 1965, the Democratic Party's strategy has been essentially to first go after and maximize white votes. Okay? And then secondly, it's kind of an afterthought, turn to progressives, turn to African Americans. And don't make an argument saying, our guy, our woman is going to be a champion for your issues, right? Instead, the argument is, you're going to go with the Republicans? Is that a viable option? You're going to vote for that guy? And so instead of engaging African Americans, progressives, Democrats, and I saw this in North Carolina, this plays out in this book, Democrats just assume that African Americans and progressives will go for any old Democrat. And I don't think that Hillary Clinton is any old Democrat, but I think what we saw in 2016 is that after years and years of the party kind of promising big and delivering small, Democrats, progressives say, you know what, I don't love Donald Trump, but I'm tired of being told, cycle after cycle, this is the candidate. These are the issues. Right? I'm tired of not being engaged. And so you see people kind of responding by saying, you know what, millennials in particular, I'm just not going to deal with it. They don't care. This is about further enriching the wealthy. It's about further entrenching the status quo. And I argue that's precisely the wrong way to respond to what's going on. Right? That's what they want you to do. Right? They're actually banking on you deciding, they're not going to engage. Why waste time and money engaging folks that don't really want to engage anyway? Right? I think that our system functions best when we have a strong Democratic Party, but also a strong Republican Party. Our system was meant to create tension, to get to the right outcomes. And when you have either Democrats or Republicans going roughshod, that's not going to get to the right outcomes. Believe me, I'm telling you, it's not just about Democrats and Republicans. So like I said, I am really happy about the opportunity we have now after Donald Trump's election to re-engage and really deliver on the Hope of 2008. This book, it's fiction, but people who know me will and have frequently said, "Hey, what about this? That sounds familiar. Where's the line between Al Carpenter and David Mitchell? Where are they separated?" This book really seeks to pull back the curtain on what it's like to be an African American candidate running for office, and it's still running the same old playbook, right? That wink, wink, nod, nod. Here's Jack Kennedy, right? He's comfortable being around black people, right? This is your candidate. And I argue that what we now have in America is a new American majority, right? And that new American majority, look at the numbers. 28% of the electorate is comprised of white progressives, and 23% of the electorate is now comprised of black and brown people. So together, they constitute 51%, a new American majority. And the Democratic Party has to either change or die. And I hope that our party, in the aftermath of what we saw in 2016, will realize that you can't just keep putting up the same old candidates. Because we are not going to just keep on punching the ballot just because you said these are the people. So this book is a coming of age story too, right? And the political coming of age piece is really tied into the personal coming of age piece. Al Carpenter is a young man, African American man, smart, good looking, unlike me, and intelligent. And so he's running in circles where he has, lots of options socially, right? So that, at some point, as we all know, particularly the men in the room, becomes a problem, right? At some point, you've got to decide, I'm going to change or die, right? You have to either become a man or live in this existence of perpetual boyhood. And so while Al Carpenter is dealing with those kind of, that push and pull, he's also dealing with a campaign where he's being told a black man can't win. And let me also say that it's not just, the usual suspects who are fighting this campaign. It's people that look like you and me. And so we are, in some ways, enabling the perpetuation of the very thing that we're complaining about. Hope you read this book. I hope you find that there is hope, but that we've got to change our behaviors. Right? It's not going to be easy. Getting out and knocking on doors is hard. We've got other things we're doing in our lives. But think about what we did in 2008. Kind of channel back in your minds to that moment when he won. Right? That was the beginning, not an end. And I think so many of us treated it like that was the end of the story instead of the beginning of a much larger story about progress in this country. That's why I wrote this book. That's why I left the law. That's why I decided that this had to be written. So I hope you'll read it. I hope you'll enjoy it. It's also, I think, a fun book. It's not just all politics. I think politics is fun too. But there are real people living their lives in the midst of the political campaign. So I hope you find hope in all these streets. If there are any questions, yes, sir. Jim.
Hey.
How you doing?
So what happened? I want to know what happened when you went to North Carolina with that campaign.
Oh, in 2010?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we lost the primary.
Because?
Because the Democratic Party was running the same playbook. Right? It's the again, we had people telling us. It wasn't just kind of us postulating that white folks are against black folks. It was much more complicated than that. People were telling us, both black and white, that look, we want to be with this guy, Ken Lewis, but we just can't because he can't win. Right? But again, 9 months before, we'd already proven that to be false. So kind of the point is that kind of the reversionary power of the status quo kicked in 2010. And we forgot something as big as Barack Obama being elected president. By the way, Ken Lewis shares a lot of the characteristics that Barack Obama, a law guy, lawyer. It was really kind of similar in terms of the kind of personages. That's why it's even more frustrating that they could not see past kind of the reversion back to the status quo.
I asked you that because I was at the Hay time when he came here to speak.
Okay.
So I met him.
Oh, you met him? Okay.
All right?
Cool.
And he seemed like, a very good candidate, but they had pinpointed somebody that they wanted.
That's right.
Period.
Yeah. And so
like 2 years before.
Yeah. So let me talk about that too. That's important. Washington is engaged in a perpetual campaign. There are two entities in D.C., one called the DCCC and one called the DSCC. So the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. Their job, they have one job, that is to elect congressmen, senators, and congressmen. And what you find is that oftentimes, particularly when there's a talented minority in the race, they will come into the state and tell the party who the candidate is going to be. And so they did that in our race in 2010. They chose a guy named Cal Cunningham. None of this is done in public, right? This is kind of behind the scenes. They start signaling to the big funders, the big donors, okay, this year's going to be this guy. So, surprise, surprise, politics is about raising money. And if the DCCC or DSCC says to the party apparatus, this is the guy this year, the people who have the money are not going to waste their time giving money to a black person who's talented, even though they may like him because he can't win, right? So it goes. So yeah, I mean, this is a real thing. And I feel like people don't really know about it because no one talks about it. But the party, our Democratic Party, is often actively fighting the very types of candidates that reflect the things that we saw in Barack Obama. Think about that. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you talk to the effectiveness of the African American-led PACs?
In the book?
Just in general.
Oh, you haven't read the book, have you? You're gonna love it because this book actually is a kind of centers on the behavior of these black PACs. I'll tell you kind of generally in the book, you have these black PACs who are struggling to figure out how to respond to this talented black candidate. Think back to 2007 when this guy Barack Obama was coming up, right? And all the black folks in power were saying, no, I'm with Hillary, right? Remember this? Like when it was laughable to think that Barack Obama would be president. I remember I was like, this guy can't win, right? All of the bagmen across all the states had been in Hillary's pocket for literally decades. They were just waiting for her to run. And what you saw there was that Barack Obama, because he raised money, going directly to people, was able to go around the power apparatus, right? You kind of silenced them. And once the illusion became real, those power brokers had to jump on the Obama train or lose their power, right? Because ultimately, we enabled those people. In the book, we saw that, right? We have these 4 major black PACs who are, one day supporting Ron Johnson as the candidate. The next day, we find out at some event in Winston-Salem, wherever, that one of those black PAC persons is now supporting the other candidate behind the scenes, and also giving money and supporting the other candidate. So, I mean, this goes on. That stuff is actually true and real. And it's really disgusting, but that's the game. And so kind of the ultimate argument I make in this book and how I market it is that this is how you play the game, right? And if you figure out the rules and kind of play the game in a non-emotional way, you can win. But you gotta win the game first, right? And the game is disgusting. So yeah, I mean, people kind of have a sense that politics is nasty. It's worse. It's
A
worse.
prime example, John Lewis had never had a viable candidate run against him. And that example there was that once they found out that Barack Obama was viable, and now John and Hillary was like this, all right? And Bill, for years, John had to go because the Atlanta power brokers, black ones, went to him and said, hey, look, this is the direction we're going in, that's the direction you're going in. He had to go and sit down with Hillary and Bill and say, hey, look, I'm sorry, but I'm moving on. And that's what happened. And that's what really got the things that happened in Atlanta or in Georgia area going.
Back to your point quickly, one of the main themes in my book is something I call the demonstration project, which is a thesis I came up along with Ken Lewis. It reflects an American tendency towards commitments to commitments, which means committing to ideas, but not to the work that's required to bring about the change they profess. So you think about the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, well, that obviously was inconsistent with what was happening in our country at the time. The Emancipation Proclamation, people think, oh, this is a grand document. It was good, but it actually was a wartime measure, right? Meant to weaken the South so that we could win the war. They actually had no interest in African Americans being equal citizens, and we saw that all play out in the late 19th and early 20th century, civil rights movement. So America is all about demonstrating. We get busy demonstrating, like, oh, look, I support Barack Obama, right? I got my Barack Obama card, right? But when it comes time to do the hard work, 2010, right? When you have these important Senate races going on, we kind of go back to our lives like nothing's going on, right? That's actually the critical moment, right? To start doing the work. And so until we stop demonstrating, right? And start actually committing, we're gonna keep having, 2010's all over. 2010, by the way, I don't know if everyone follows politics closely. But in 2010, it was the biggest bloodbath in the Congress since the 1940s and the 30s. We lost something like 63 U.S. Senate seats. I think something like 63 U.S. House seats. Something like 12, 14. I mean, it was a bloodbath. People don't know that. They just kind of were like, okay, oh wait, it was great, and we got Obama, and he's going to make it all happen, right? How, I don't know, but it's going to happen because we got Obama. Right? The last 8 years, we saw that the president wasn't quite able to do a lot of the things that we wanted to do. It wasn't. There's a reason for that, because he didn't have a Congress to work with, and that's because we didn't go out and vote for Democrats or whoever you happen to support.
Are you able to read for us today? Anything?
Sorry?
Are you prepared to read for us today?
I'm prepared to do anything. You want me to read something?
We have a runoff here with Ossoff and Panhandle.
Okay.
Is that his name?
Yes.
Okay, and in Kansas, there was a razor-thin race right before this, the night of the Georgia race, at election night. That district in Kansas was expected to easily go to the Republicans, but it didn't. It was razor-thin. We have a runoff here. Do you think the Democratic Party is doing everything they should to support the candidates that are going to be engaged in these special elections?
In Atlanta?
All over the country, they have several.
I mean, is the party doing enough to support
The special elections, because some people complain. I mean, they had some money pouring in, but it was almost like they were throwing money and running away. Throwing money, running away. There was no concerted effort.
Tons of money.
Right, but is there?
Pardon me, I'm not fully fluent in the politics, but
that's the big thing here.
Use that. They're throwing tons of money.
I know they are, but it's not just money. It's going to take strategic work, all kinds of stuff.
right. But you folks who live here have to be engaged in.
Well, it's District 6.
Okay. Yeah, people in the district. Yeah.
It's the one Tom Price vacated.
Okay.
But they're having them all. So we have to start now.
Yeah. Right.
To get these special elections.
Right. I mean, the solution to all of this is to stop the establishment from being able to engage in this top-down politics.
Right.
And the way you do that is by getting out and voting and not voting for the person that the party says is your candidate, unless you agree with that person. Right? And it's easy to kind of sit back and let it all happen, but that's how you get the progress.
I just have a question. Because of your knowledge and because of the book that you've written, have you considered running for it?
No. Next question. Next question. I'm going to get into that question.
Do you see another party arising, because a lot, I know with the young people, they're really sick and tired of the Democrats and the Republicans. Do you see another party rising up, gonna rise up?
So I'll answer that. I'll have two answers for that. One is absolutely not, because of the way the money flows currently. The second answer is I hope so. Because again, I think that the problem that we have now is there's not a legitimate opposition. And so until you have legitimate opposition, the status quo has no incentive to change what they're doing. Right? So we had, Jill Stein, we had a couple others this cycle, and they weren't able to get, they did okay, right? But nothing to challenge that you probably have. I think that the best way forward is to empower one of the other parties. I think it's probably not viable. We're not going to see a legitimate third party. We haven't really seen one since the early 20th century, the progressives, and even they weren't successful. Now, what we could see, and this is what they did in the early 20th century, was having a prior Democrat, right? Teddy Roosevelt ended up going over to the Progressive Party, right? So he was a known entity that was very popular. They did pretty well. Still lost to Woodrow Wilson. But I think that would be required, right? Having someone that's known within the Democratic Party to kind of go over and say, I've seen the light. Let's go over and start push back against the Democratic Party.
If you're in Atlanta, anybody here who has seen the John Ossoff advertisements, if you're not